By the time you're 50 years old, you should know at least one good poem memorized. By the time you're 50 years old, you should know the difference between a good wine or a bad wine or a good whiskey or a bad whiskey, you know? And I realize some of that's personal. The whole thing's personal. I mean, you can drink whatever wine or whiskey you want. But uh, some wines are better than others. And by the time you've got a little bit of refinement in your ability to taste the difference, then it becomes very obvious, you know? So, like, and there are some wines that I will drink. I have some wines that I will drink happily, and I have some wines that I wouldn't drink because they're just not worth the hassle. And those are my personal reasons, but I'll tell you what they are, just to be clear. I personally would not drink a wine from California because the studies that have been done, formally or informally, whatever, and you can criticize them all you want, but the investigations that have been done have shown that the wines from California are loaded with pesticides, glyphosate specifically. So I personally would not drink a wine from California. I also, for the same reason, I wouldn't drink a wine from France because the French wines are notoriously loaded with pesticides, especially from the Bordeaux region. Uh, and I've looked that up, and apparently it's true. But that was actually told to me when I was in France by a guy who lives in France, uh, and he's a native Frenchman, and he said, "Don't drink the wines here because they have so many pesticides in the wines." We were in I don't know where we were, southern France, maybe Paris, but I don't recall exactly. I guess it was Paris. Uh, he said, "Don't drink the wines from France, but especially Bordeaux because they're loaded with pesticides." I looked it up later. Turns out that it's true. So I don't drink California wines, and I don't drink French wines because of the pesticides. I tend to drink Italian, but only Primitivo if I can get it, and it's hard to get. But Primitivo is probably my favorite wine on the planet. Uh, what I emphasize in the video that I did last year are the wines from Spain because, in my experience, they're the most reliable. We also, like I said, we lived in Spain for about 9 years, from 2013 to 2022. So I was very familiar with Spanish wines, and they're good quality. They have a good kind of ranking system that's reliable. So they have, I don't have a good example, and I don't remember the name right now. But they have kind of a young wine, and then you get into the reserves. And the reserves are at least 3 years old, and the grand reserves are 5 years old in Spain. I think that also applies in Italy. But it doesn't apply, for example, in Chile. In Chile, a reserve Chilean wine is only 6 months old. That's like fruit juice. That's not even a wine. And for me, the distinction is quite obvious. So I won't drink wine from California for the pesticides. I won't drink wine from France for the pesticides. I won't drink wine generally from Chile, even if it says reserve, because their reserve is only 6 months, and for me, their wines are horrible. After going to Argentina and going to Mendoza and trying to be friendly with Argentinian wines, especially Malbec, especially from Mendoza, I probably wouldn't drink a Argentinian wine either. I just don't like them. Maybe some people do, I just don't. So I'm pretty much stuck with Italian Primitivo, otherwise known as the Zinfandel grape, or a Spanish wine, typically from Rioja, but not always from Rioja. It doesn't have to be from that region. I just bought a wine totally by chance. Well, I guess not totally by chance, but it was by chance a few weeks ago, and it was a Spanish wine. It's a Tempranillo grape, but I have it right here, so hold on. It's a Tempranillo grape, but it's remarkably good. I'm just going to show you some examples. These are partially empty bottles. So like I said, I love certain places in Argentina. This is a Malbec. Happens to have the name of my favorite neighborhood, which is San Telmo. But I would not drink. I just saved it for the bottle. I don't like Malbecs. This wine is a Tempranillo. It's an organic. It's an organic Tempranillo from Spain, but it's not a Rioja. Let me see where it says it's from. From the southeastern province of Zamora. I don't exactly know where that is, but I think it's kind of central southern Spain, I believe. I could be wrong. If I'm totally wrong, I'll try to make a correction in the video. I didn't realize this was organic. But this is an organic Tempranillo from Spain. Organic wines tend to be pretty young because they don't have a good shelf life. And this tasted like a Primitivo from Italy. So I was pretty happy with that. And I paid for that one, first time I bought it, I paid $20, $22 for it. The second time I bought it at a different store, I paid $12 for it. Here's a Primitivo from Italy. Again, it's the Zinfandel grape. And I bought this thinking I was going to love it. I didn't really love it that much. I don't really have... I mean, I talk about wine and I talk about whiskey just for topics. I actually don't have much of a taste for... I don't have like some big desire to drink either one of them, even though sometimes I do. But, you know, like one glass and I'm done, typically. I just don't... I don't know. Maybe it's the social setting. So I guess if I'm with friends and we're celebrating something, then everything, of course, tastes better. But as far as just like drinking a glass of wine for the hell of it, maybe one glass, you know, with my nightly melatonin, but then I'm done. Different people react to alcohol in whatever way they do. For me, it just makes me feel sleepy. So like I can't... Some people like to drink. I don't like to drink. I have half a glass of wine with my melatonin and go to bed, and that's it. Other people, when they drink alcohol, they actually feel more stimulated and legitimately elevated or happier. I don't ever have that experience unless it's because of the social setting. So anyway, like I was saying, by the time you're 50, you ought to know... You ought to have memorized a good poem. You ought to know how to pick a good wine and a good whiskey. Specifically, of course, I'm talking about the difference between single malt versus a blend. Maybe some people don't have the problem with blends that other people do, you know. So blends, by definition, are mixtures of different whiskeys. I interpret that as being lower quality. By definition, they're not filtered. Which by definition means they have more congeners, which means you're more likely to get a hangover from a blend than you are from a single malt. So if I'm going to drink a whiskey, you're damn right, it better be a single malt. And from what I've looked at, two brands of whiskey are notoriously for not having additives and especially artificial colors. And those are Macallan and Glenrothes. No, is it Glenrothes? It's from Scotland, I believe. I think it's Glenrothes. Yeah. So it's the rounded bottle. So I'll put a picture of the bottle on the screen when I'm editing this video. But Macallan doesn't put artificial colors, and if I'm saying this correctly, if I'm remembering it correctly, it's Glenrothes, but it's the round bottle. Those are the only two brands that I'm familiar with that specifically don't put additives like artificial colors. So The other thing, and I have a few other items on my list, but I'm going to close out this video in the next 30 seconds. And that is, this is kind of a joke, but it's actually kind of serious, depending on a person's perspective. But by the time you're 50 years old, you also shouldn't wear a hat inside. That's not what hats are for. So I'll show you a video clip that I enjoy on that theme.
Let me ask you a question. Why does your wife hate me?
Charmaine doesn't hate you.
Yeah, you lie like I played a French horn.
What?
Look at this Fachim over here. Wearing a cap at a nice restaurant like this.
That's one of the things I hated most when I had my restaurant. Its values today. Standards are crumbling.
I would have killed this coach to stick around until my kid graduates.
Then let him stay 4 years for Kiara.
Right.
That burns my ass. Where you going?
That would be great.
Take your hat off.
Excuse me?
They don't sell hot dogs here. They took the bleachers out 2 years ago.
It's my hat. I'll wear it where I want.
How you doing?
Thank you. Look at him. Douchebag. Good for you.
Send them a bottle of Montepulciano and get the license plate of these two guys sitting behind Artie. Get the valet to do it. They look like cops.
And that's my wrap up for this introduction of the new topics on brain health, specifically focusing on migraine and anhedonia. Because like I said, if we just focus on the treatment of depression, the best we're going to do is get people undepressed or back to neutral. And I think the goal, from my perspective, and obviously from a Nietzschean perspective, the goal isn't to simply be neutral. The goal is to enjoy life and to be, assertively passionate about something and certainly enjoy one's own creativity. I mean, by the time people can't enjoy their own creativity, they're pretty screwed. What they're showing or what they're living is a very limited version of life. And like I said in the book, the goal of healthcare should be the optimization of physical health and psychosocial, intellectual well-being. The optimization, not simply getting people unstuck, but getting them to a place where they can actually enjoy life. So those are the things I'm going to focus on. I'll put out some videos today and over the weekend. But again, I'm going to advance the series on brain health using migraine and anhedonia as examples. And I'm going to continue now and then that series on, by the time you're 50 years old, you should do X. You should memorize at least one poem that you love. You should know how to pick a good wine and a good whiskey. And hopefully, you know the difference between wearing a hat indoors or not.